Good evening and welcome to Conservative Chat, a show brought to you by the Barkhamsted Republican Town Committee. My name is Juliana Simone and my guest this evening is our State Senator Kevin Witkos.
Hi, Juliana.
Who represents the 8th District.
Glad to be here.
It's nice to have you. Thanks for coming. Now, the 8th District, that has what? It's the second largest in the state, right?
It is. I represent 11 communities from Avon out to Norfolk and from Heartland down to Harwinton.
Yeah, it's a great district, too.
It is. It's one of the best districts, I say, in the state.
And you still have a part of Torrington, right?
I actually have because of redistricting, Torrington, my district grew. So I have a larger number of residents in Torrington than I did in 2010. My district shrank in the town of Granby and in the town of Harwinton.
Okay.
But I expanded in Torrington.
All
so
right.
the numbers kind of stayed the same, but just shifted around a little bit.
All right. Okay.
Gerrymandered, if you will.
I know. I wasn't going to say it. I tried to be good. But and so for those that don't know Kevin, because Kevin's been around a long time. He lives in Canton and started on your local boards, right? Board of Ed.
I started my first election and spent 5 years on my local Board of Education.
Yeah, real good background to have.
Yeah, I mean,
to bring down to the Capitol.
Well, education is key. You know, it's the foundation of everything. If you can't read and write, you're not going to go anywhere in this world today. And so I started off in education, and then I ran for state representative in the state house.
Right. Now it's 2 towns. That state rep seat is
right,
what?
Yeah.
17.
I was in the 17th district, representing Avon and Canton, and then our senator at the time, decided to not run for re-election.
Tom
so
Hurley,
I ran for re-election, and I was successful. And now I represent the 8th district. I've been there for 6 years.
Yeah.
And I'm very honored to folks continue to send me back to Hartford to do the people's work.
Certainly. Well, I think you're a popular senator. I hear you on the radio sometimes. I thought I heard you recently on the radio.
I try to just do what I think is right, and we can agree to disagree at the end of the day, but I take into account what my constituents, how they think I should vote, and that's what drives my decisions often.
Now, career-wise, you served on your Canton Police Department for a long time.
Yeah, I was a law enforcement officer for 28 years. I retired from Canton as a sergeant in the police department after 23 years. And I got a job over at CLMP. I work in their community relations and economic development division, so I'm very happy with been there for a couple of years now.
Right, and then there's other new news, right? It's a personal thing that you wanted to do, right?
Yeah,
so when you retired from the police force, you...
Well, I thought it would be kind of cool. I keep talking about small businesses being the economic engine of our economy. Bought a small business, my wife and I did, and we opened up Wilson's Pub in Collinsville. It used to be known as the Fireplace Cafe.
Okay.
We gutted it and refurbished it, and now it's a very popular eatery and a place to have a cocktail or two.
I drove by it the other day. It was very pretty.
We just celebrated our 1-year anniversary yesterday,
excellent.
And we have 12 employees.
Oh,
so
do you really?
I'm putting my money where my mouth is.
I like this. See, Senator Witkos even employs people, 12 people right there.
Yeah. And I tell you, I thought I knew everything when I was in the Senate, but not until you actually own a business and see what mandates the state and regulatory environment the state requires do you really get a good understanding.
Oh boy, I bet.
It is. More legislators, if they have the wherewithal or the good mind to get involved in a business, really should.
Okay. Now, you're seeking re-election.
I am.
This fall.
This fall I'll be up for hopefully my 4th term to serve in the state Senate.
Yeah. And even with more, we were even hoping too that if we get a Republican governor elected, that and we win 4 Senate seats in the Senate circle, that you'd be what then?
Well,
you'd be promoted to what?
Well, I'm hoping there'll be others that want to move up, but I'd like to move into be the majority leader in the Senate if I can. But I think what we need is we need a Republican chamber in Hartford, because we've seen over the last 4 years that one-party rule is not good for the state of Connecticut. We're the worst state to conduct business in, the worst place to retire in. Our unemployment is lagging behind the rest of the nation. We have the highest per debt, on and on and on and on.
Right. The new survey they just showed, we were second in the country for people that would move tomorrow if they could.
Right. And people, and
Next to
that's
Illinois.
pretty sad that our own residents don't want to stay here.
I know.
And they said if they could pick up and move today, they would. So how do we change that? And we don't have a checks and balances anymore in Hartford, because at least under the Roland Rell administration, they could veto a bill. And at the time, the Democrats, if they had the supermajority, they could override the veto, but there was a stopgap measure or checks and balances. We don't have that anymore. And we've seen that by Governor Malloy with the largest tax increase in the history of our state, flew through the legislature without any opposition. The Republicans opposed it. Not one Republican supported it. But the fact of the matter is, we sustained our largest tax increase, and we're still looking at a $3 billion deficit in our out years. So nothing's been changed systematically. So
Yeah, that Malloy
that's an
math
issue.
they refer to. Because,
Right.
I mean, they're always saying somehow that we have this surplus. It's this mystery surplus, you know, and we're so badly in debt. Of course there's no surplus, but they keep, you know, fudging those numbers. And
The governor's focused on the budget today and not what's going to happen out in the outlying years, and that's not being truthful to the residents of Connecticut, saying, what do you expect? When we make our household budgets, we have to look at, well, what's going to be our expenses come in January and February of next year. Let's not worry about what our budget is in June and July of this year only.
Right, and this was the short session, this last session, and that's where you're supposed to deal with money. But you told me you wanted to explain it more like in terms with, so in other words, an elected official's, a legislator's terms. And what it encompasses in those 2 years is the long session and the short session, right?
Yeah, interesting. I've never seen it before. My 12 years now in Hartford, we serve a term, and a term is 2 sessions. So we have a long session the first year of our election and a short session the second year of our election. Now in our first year this year, we had that horrendous issue down in Newtown, the massacre of the children and the teachers. And that happened in December, so we hadn't even gotten into session yet. Our session started in January. So that pretty much paralyzed the legislature for that entire year up until almost the very end of the year. People were scrambling to say, we have to do something, what can we do? The governor had convened a task force to look at school safety and gun control issues. The legislature, not wanting to be outdone by the governor, created their own bipartisan task force to look at mental health issues, school safety, and gun violence. And so different members of the legislature were asked to serve on those committees, and I was fortunate enough to serve on 2 of the committees. I served on the gun control and the school safety committees, I think in part because of my background in law enforcement.
I would think, yeah.
And so that pretty much consumed from January until I think we ended up voting on the bill in April. And we got out the first week in June, so almost the entire session was dealing with the Newtown issue. And in the second year, which we just concluded this past May, there was a power struggle in Hartford from the Democrats against the Democrats. I had never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, that's not their usual,
Ever.
their modus operandi. That's not how they usually operate.
Usually they walk lockstep with each other because
Yeah.
they want to show unity within the party, and I get that. But what happened this year was the president of the Senate had a pet bill, had to do with genetically modified grass seed he wanted passed. And
One of
so
those
he passed
important
it,
bills.
sent it down to the House chamber,
Yeah.
and the House, usually it would sit on their calendar for a few days and before they have a right to vote on it. They said, we're going to suspend the rules and we're going to take it up today. And then they voted the bill down, and the Speaker of the House voted the bill down against it as well. He didn't work for the bill to pass it. He voted against the bill, which is very unique. You don't see that happen.
Now,
And
why
so-
is that? Why did the bill have no support, though, in the House? They just thought it was superficial or just not important, or why?
Oh, there's no science behind it.
Yeah.
The fact
I
that
know
we're-
that, but I was just wondering why because it is unusual that they don't vote with their caucus.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and I think part of it was the
They
fact
had
that
some logic there.
the president of the Senate doesn't control the House, but he was telling them, you will do this. Without working collaboratively, he was working from a dictatorial standpoint, and people didn't like that.
Right.
People don't like folks that exercise their power to a certain degree, and that's not good government. And so they kind of pushed back, and that started off a war between the House and the Senate Democrats. And as Republicans, we just sat back and twiddled our thumbs and got the popcorn and kind of watched and saw what happened. So again, the session was paralyzed almost until the last month. And then
Yeah, this
something broke
was not
the logjam and bills started
very
passing.
much. This story did not get out much.
No,
I mean, even if
it's-
you follow the political blogs, Kevin Rennie or anything like that, I don't remember seeing that anywhere.
Yeah, it didn't get a lot of public fare because it's embarrassing. I mean, nobody wants to publicize the fact that we
Yeah.
can't get along. We're supposed to be mature adults here. They're elected to represent the people.
So
And
you said the
because-
repercussion, though, was that Don Williams and the Senate Majority Leader said, then we're not going to pass any of your bills.
Well, I mean,
So-
they didn't want to pass each
The
other's.
House
I mean, they
bills.
just
Yeah.
stopped everything.
Wow.
And then it was, I don't know what it was that they brokered a deal, and then the dam opened up and the bill started flowing between the
Okay.
two chambers. So a lot was done in the last 2 weeks, which
Well, that's
is not
common
good government either.
No. And plus the 3 months, the short session is supposed to deal with fiscal matters, not grass seed.
Right. It's only supposed to deal with matters of the budget, as you know.
Yes, so, oh, well, there we go. So now he's retired, right?
He
Don
is.
Williams?
This year, the Senate is seeing something that they've never seen before, and I think we have 6 retirees. So we'll have 6 new faces in the Connecticut State Senate, and there's only 36 of us. So almost, I want to say almost closing in on a third. 26% of the Senate is going to be brand new.
Wow.
And that's if everybody that's there now wins re-election. If they're
Well, I'm sorry to see Jason Welch going. He
Great guy.
shares a part of Harwinton with you in your district. He's such a nice family man, but he does have so many kids and everything. He's young. He's conservative. He's energetic.
We saw the
I'd like to
frustration of what happens in Hartford, that you get called in saying we're going in at 10 o'clock in the morning, and then you don't even start your business until 2 o'clock in the afternoon because somebody is just in a back room somewhere talking to somebody about something.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
From the
Yeah, you guys
minority,
are
you have
never in
no
a Senate
idea. So
circle.
you sit there and you just wait. And you're trying to, we're a part-time legislature, so I know on the Republican side, most, if not all, have other jobs. And so they're leaving their employment to come to Hartford to sit around and wait when you could be productive at your job and then come to Hartford.
Right.
So that's not fair. It's not how people run their homes and run their businesses. So the legislature shouldn't be run that way also.
The good news for me is that Len Suzio from Meriden is running to get his seat back.
He is.
And they just had such a successful election story in Meriden that's traditionally Democrat, with getting their mayor in there and getting some of the town council back, that I think there might be a good push to get Len back in there.
He only lost by 300 votes.
Okay.
Again, it was Obama's second year for his election. So there's a good chance
bigger turnout
that
at
Len,
the polls.
bigger turnouts on the Democratic side. So we're hoping that Len will come back and join us again this year. Definitely supporting his campaign.
Good.
He was the leader on the Democrats' proposal to be soft on crime, which is the early release program. In his community, Meriden, somebody got out early, killed somebody.
Oh, I remember the story at the gas station.
At the gas station,
Yeah.
exactly. So he's been a leading proponent of repealing that law, and we need to be tough on crime because leading into the Rockets Stadium in Hartford, who's going to go into Hartford to a Rockets game when you feel unsafe in that city?
Right, and they're saying some of the parking is going to be quite far from the stadium.
Sure, because it's not included in the whole proposal.
No, I think honestly, as soon as I heard that story, I actually thought that was just a slap to Aaron Stewart, for winning the New Britain mayor
Speaking
race.
of another good Republican that just won in a heavily Democrat city.
It was another success story.
I think the people are starting to realize that the Republicans are an inclusive group that, we're just concerned about the pocketbook. That's our main focus is, can we afford to do what we're doing, and what is the role of government in your lives? Government shouldn't be in your bedroom, shouldn't be in your pockets, shouldn't be, provide education, provide transportation, provide public safety. Those are the core elements of government. And we need to go back to focusing on that, and maybe people can keep more money in their own pockets.
I agree.
That's how I feel.
I agree. That the Rockcat story is another good story. You can't make any of it up. Well, let's talk about the governor's race, because I know that you and I have both endorsed Tom Foley and supported him the first time he ran, if I remember correctly, right?
Interesting that I think the writing's on the wall that this is going to be a very difficult year for Governor Malloy. That's why we had 6 initial candidates running for Republican position to run for governor.
Yeah, we did.
And eventually we're going to coalesce around an individual who is going to run against Governor Malloy. And I think with the hard work and the message of what we stand for as a party, people understand that, and they're getting it. And they're not listening to the other side defining who we are. They're actually spending the time of learning what we're all about, that they're going to vote down the R line. And we should be successful in retaking the executive branch, I'm hoping.
They try to pigeonhole us into, very negative profiles of, extreme conservatism, or all kinds of labels that the Democrats put on us. And I've been a town chairman a long time on my committee. I've worked on campaigns. I've run for office. I worked down at the Capitol.
Right.
I don't find any of us to be that way. I don't find any of us to be polarizing individuals. I think we all just are good.
We're old, rich, white guys who wants to throw grandma off the cliff. And everybody, no health care for anybody, and nobody should be on any type of assistance. That's just not true.
No, everyone I know that runs for office is really just mostly concerned about bringing Connecticut back into a good, growing, steady economy, bringing business back into the state, making it business friendly, providing jobs to their citizens, providing good educations to their children that are growing up here, keeping kids here that are graduating college.
I work 3 jobs, my wife works, and we still try to make ends meet. It's hard.
And
but you
talking
just do
to
what
us
you gotta do.
socially, I think we're all very well-rounded. I never hear anything that's, I don't know that they try to make us out as sounding and isolating people from voting for us. I think we all just are very generous people with our time, generous people that want to help society as a whole.
I keep hearing, oh, those Republicans and the Koch brothers. Well, I don't even know who the Koch brothers are. I mean, I know the name, but other than what I'm being labeled as being bought off by the Koch brothers, it makes no sense to me. People should take the time and learn. And that's, when you go to the polls, you really should look at who the candidates are and whether you think that if, in my case, I'm an incumbent, if you like the way I've been voting, then you should return me back to Hartford. And as long as I'm voting the way you think I should a majority of the time.
Yeah.
But if not, then you shouldn't return me back to Hartford. And same thing with your state representative, all across the different towns. If you think Connecticut's too expensive to live in and we have a crummy retirement system and the state's just going down the toilet, look at how your state representative or your state senator voted. And if they voted that way, vote them out. I mean, that's what democracy is all about. We're a representative type of government.
Right.
You know, so your elected officials are representing your views. And if they're not, then things need to change.
I agree. So let's get back to Foley, because one thing I always liked about him is he's somebody that fixes financial messes. Right. That's kind of what he does for a living. That's his profession, is he takes something that's not profitable and is failing, and he makes it successful and profitable again. Yeah. And I don't think there's a better illustration of a place that needs that more than Connecticut.
For sure. You know, people characterize Tom as the rich guy from Greenwich. First of all, he went out after college and he went and worked in a union shop as a carpenter, worked in a manufacturing plant. He built his way up. He actually started his own company,
I didn't know that.
Which is now very successful. And he earned his money the hard way.
Yeah.
He wasn't born with the money. He wasn't given the money. I mean, he was out there right after school and earned it. And where he lives, well, that's where he chooses to live. I choose to live in my hometown of Canton. You choose to live in your hometown of Barkhamsted.
Yeah. We
We all love our community. So should we force somebody to move someplace else or hold it against them because they live in a certain community?
No, that's that south of the Merritt
right.
argument.
But Tom, you know, I did support him last time, and I'm supporting him again this time. And I think he's a wonderful guy. I think that he'll represent our state well and do well by our state. You know, not anybody gets chosen to serve as a representative of the United States of America, chosen by our president to serve as our ambassador to Ireland.
Right.
I mean, that speaks volumes of the integrity of this man, that he's to be solely trusted, to have the trust of the United States, our country, invested in him. And now I'm hoping that the voters of Connecticut take that same trust and put it in him to be our governor, because he will lead us out of this financial mess that we're out of. I mean, one only has to listen to Tom speak, and he'll tell you, I'm going to hold the line on spending. We're going to hold the budget flat. We're not talking about the adjusted budget or the anticipated budget of next year. The current expenditure that we're having now, that's what we're having for 2 years. And that should right our ship, with a few other tweaks.
Well, anyone inheriting the budget as it is anyway has got their work cut out for them.
Right.
It's not something you can just flip around instantly.
No. It's going to be a mess.
Yeah.
It absolutely is going to be hard work. When I came into the legislature my first time, we were facing a huge deficit at the time, and we were there constantly in the legislature, and everybody kept saying to us, oh, it's never like this. I feel bad for you guys. We're never here this often or this late. It's just because of the financial mess we're in. Well, I think I'll bring a sleeping bag this time around because we're going to be there a long time.
Bring a sleeping bag. That's funny.
Got to get our work done.
Let's talk about, because also, I mean, I think some of the constitutional seats are important. You know, I'd like to see Denise Merrill go. I'd like to get Peter Lumage in there because I just think somebody like him would really straighten out any. I just think there's a lot of voter fraud and irregularities that just happen in our state under first Bysowitz and now Merrill. I'd like to see that all cleaned up.
Peter Lumage, who came from behind the Iron Curtain, who just loves the sanctity of the ballot box and how much, now he's an American citizen, how much he appreciates the ability to come and elect and vote for your elected official. He didn't have that growing up.
Nope.
I mean, he came to this country with nothing.
Shot,
right.
Basically.
He came to this country from Ukraine with nothing and started his own business, worked so hard, and now he's a successful businessman. And he wants to give back, and one of the ways he wants to give back is he sees the problems. We also, what happened in Bridgeport 2 years ago, a 911 system calling certain voters to say the polls are still open for 2 more hours, make sure you get down here and vote. the irregularities of printing off ballot sheets on a photocopy machine, finding ballots the next day. I mean, come on, we've never
no one
had
reporting their totals for a few days.
And you know, we were only short by 0.5% on the governor's race. So, and Peter Lamage is a great candidate to run for Secretary of State, who's going to clean up that office and say, no more. We're not going to have irregularities. We're not going to do these special things for this special community. A lot of that, the problem was that the Secretary of State wasn't prepared. We should never be running out of ballots at an election.
Yeah.
It should not happen.
Yeah, a lot of people talked about that why would she give so few to Bridgeport anyway? That's a large city.
And Timmy Herbst, who's running for treasurer.
Yep.
Another super
I
guy.
liked Bob Ike too, but I mean, they were both good candidates.
Yeah, well, but Bob threw his support behind Tim now,
That was
and
nice
so Tim's our candidate, and Mayor, First Selectman of the City of Trumbull, who's doing a dynamic job down there.
Yeah, he's been down there 3 or 4 terms.
You know, he has, and you know, we see the shell game right now by our current treasurer, Denise Napier, whether it's using cash funds to pay for operating expenses and moving things around. You know, we're one of a few states that were downgraded by the credit rating agency. Downgraded, not improved, but downgraded because of our policies in our state. So that's not something to be proud of. So I think we need change within our constitutional officers to help the governor and the legislature make those types of changes.
Absolutely.
Time for some new, fresh, bold ideas.
It's so stagnant.
Right.
I mean,
We've been under the
problem.
Democratic rule up and down
Over
our
20
ticket
years.
for over 20 years.
Yeah, long time.
You know, it's time for change.
I always ask the viewers, you know, why not give us a shot? You know, what do you see if there's any change?
Sure. And they do in the governor's level.
Yeah.
But the governor needs assistance. It's like
He does.
having a hockey team, or since we're going on in the World Cup right now, having a goaltender there, but not having any forward players or any mid or backfield. So the goalkeeper's supposed to do everything. You can't win a game if you're just the goalkeeper. And that's how our Connecticut government's set up. We've got a Republican governor at the time, but none of the other players were out on the field because we weren't elected to a majority and we didn't have any of the statewide offices. So give the governor some teammates.
I agree
to get
with
the job
you.
done.
It's so important, and I think most Connecticut voters are finally starting to recognize this.
They are.
So I'm hoping that we have a good, you know.
It all comes down to getting the vote out. You know, we have our primary for our governor. We have Tom Foley, John McKinney, and Joe Visconti.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that because you know,
on August 12th. So everybody make sure you get out to vote.
At the convention, you know, Tom decided he wanted it to be a 3-way primary because John McKinney, your boss, essentially, your minority leader there at the Senate, he wasn't quite getting up to that 15% he needed. He was around 11%. I think. I was writing it all down at the time. And so he decided he wanted the 3-way rather than just him and Mark Boughton going up against each other, who had got his 15% at that point. And so he made it 3-way, you know, had some switching you can do at the convention, right? And so now McKinney's on it, but now Boughton's dropped out and endorsed Tom. And so it ended up being sort of, I don't know if that worked in Tom's favor or not, because if he hadn't done that for McKinney, I guess my point is that he'd just be the nominee now and not have to do the primary. Well, what do you think about that?
You know, I think it's good in a sense. It was only because of a third-party candidate that we won a Senate district down in the shoreline last year, because there was an independent party, a Democratic Party, and the Republican candidate, and he won with 48% of the vote. So people say, well, usually don't you have to have 50% plus 1% or 51% to win? Right. So he won with 48% because the other votes were divided out. So in some cases that's good. And I think Tom's thought was, if I'm that successful in the campaign, but based on percentages, I want to make sure that those two will split their vote, so I will come out on top through a primary. And as we all know, Mayor Mark Boughton had withdrawn from the race now and thrown his support behind Tom. And so now it is Tom and John McKinney. And do you see John dropping out? No, he'll just stay right into the primary. I think that he will go. He's committed into the race, and you know, very talented speaker, very knowledgeable about what's happening in our state because he's living it. Yeah. I mean, he's been in the legislature for 14 years, so certainly he knows it. But I think in Connecticut, folks are looking for somebody from the outside of the legislature to drive the car. I agree with you. And I think, too, that the weakness with John McKinney, unfortunately, is, you know, the Second Amendment people are very true to their word. And if they say they're not going to vote for someone, if that's our nominee, they will not. I've seen them stay home. I've seen them not. Or they go and they don't fill in that one circle. And I think with the numbers so close, we want a
percentage that's high enough in the governor's race that they can't pad or fix the election results on election day. So I think just for me with John, if indeed 2% of people, or however many of those Second Amendment people are that are adamant about this, aren't going to vote for him, then we need that 2%. So,
well, it's hard when you've got a group working against you, actively working against you, versus cheering on the other guy. So, you know, that's difficult. That's going to be a difficult thing for Senator McKinney to overcome.
Well, let's talk about Joe Visconti then, because then you could argue then that isn't he a spoiler too? Because I mean, if he stays in, I like Joe. I know his passion is where it is, and I've known him since he ran for Congress in '08 and all that stuff. But I'm wondering, so where's his goal in this? Because he's going to shave votes too.
Well, I think honestly, a vote for Joe Visconti is a wasted vote. You need money to run a campaign, whether you want to send out your message in flyers or get on TV or do something. Or one person can't themselves get across the entire state of Connecticut. I mean, you just can't. 169 towns, you can't do it. And so I think Joe's raised under $10,000. So there's no way you can be competitive in a race at that point. So if it comes down to Foley, Visconti, and Malloy, I would hope everybody would vote for, if they want change, vote for Foley, because again, if we come down to the last election was over 6,000 votes.
Yeah. So
every vote does count. You make sure if you want true change, you got to vote for where the change is possible.
And Foley's the right man for the job, as we've agreed on. The congressional races, you see any hope there? Any change maybe with another former Senate mate of you, Dan DeBasile and Himes, or with Mark Greenberg in the 5th against Esty?
You know, everybody's working hard. I think this is the year of we're going to do our best to get our base out. I saw recently that Governor Malloy is trying to reach a plurality in the cities. That's where he's concentrating his campaigns, Bridgeport, New Haven, Hartford, and he's hoping that will put him over the top, because Foley won so many towns last time. You know, with Mayor Mark Boughton being a Republican, Aaron Stewart being a Republican of New Britain, Mark Greenberg may have a better chance this year because the Republicans are gaining Eleanor Carbone in Torrington again,
right?
Republicans. So. Yep. Some of the major cities in the 5th District are governed by Republican leaders, whether it's a mayor or first selectman. So does that translate?
You don't know.
You don't know. I mean, for me, it's a crystal ball, because you're so removed being in being in Washington, D.C. from being back home. So I don't know where everybody is on that. I haven't seen any polling data either.
I think people vote federally differently than they do in terms of the state, but let's hope for the best.
That's why the Dems try to paint us all as national Republicans when we're saying we're Connecticut Republicans.
How can someone reach you, Kevin, if they have a question for you with some news in District 8 that concerns them or some issue?
Sure. The best way is on my website, kevinwitkos.com, or kevin.witkos@cga.ct.gov.
All right, excellent. And he's always around, too. Look for him.
Thank you, Juliana.
Or stop by at Wilson's, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Thank you. Good night.